Welcome back to Wonderworld. It is episode 10, the second to last episode, and we are building this week, as you've seen, the wooden coaster. I think I teased in the last episode this huge patch of land down here with a nice view over to the log flume. And there was this, which I was very badly covering up the coaster making behind it, and as you can now see, is a wooden coaster. Now with this coaster, I'm going to be doing something that I don't normally do, which it's going to be inspired by Robin Hood, which is a Vekoma wooden coaster at Wallaby, Holland, but I'm not going to give it a manufacturer because I don't really know, is the honest truth. This wooden coaster would have been built quite a while ago, maybe opening with the park, maybe a few years after the Zero Family coaster that I built in episode 3? But it would be quite an older ride, as you can tell by the track colour, so I'm not going to give it a specific manufacturer. I'm kind of sort of picturing what Blackpool do, where it might have been built sort of the early 80s, maybe late 80s, so it would have probably been built in-house by the park. Like, it wouldn't have been built by CCI or GCI or Vekoma or the DIN Corporation or anything, because they either weren't doing business in the UK or weren't a thing like around the time that this coaster would have been created. I think the main challenge I had with this coaster that I just could not decide what I wanted to do with it. As you've just seen there, I just completely deleted the entire layout that I'd made there. I was just really struggling to find something that fit, and this layout I'm building here, this one doesn't stay either. I kind of went for like a almost El Toro kind of turnaround first drop, but then I thought, just from approaching this coaster from quite far away, I didn't want it to be this tall, and as you can see there, I've reduced the height of it, and after I've built a bit more of the layout, and this is the final one, but after I've built a bit more of this layout, I reduced the height yet again, so I think it's maybe a couple of meters under Robin Hood's height, because I just didn't want it to be like the most foreboding coaster of the park, and obviously when this was built, wooden coasters and just coasters in general wouldn't have been this tall. And as you can see here, I'm changing the track colour of this part. This will be the first of many parts that I do this. I'm kind of picturing maybe the gravity group have come in at some point and retracked certain parts to make them like more intense or more thrilling. Like that would have given, like I'd imagine the original coaster would have just been a completely flat section there. So it's given it some more like modern exciting elements like that little speed hill. So then after this speed hill, I built this large kind of like banked turnaround, and then eventually changed the speed hill into more of a double up because I thought that kind of fitted better, and it's kind of what more older coasters do as well instead of speed hills. Like if you look at the Grand National Blackpool, that's got quite, I think it's got more than one double up actually. So it was a good example of like a classic wooden coaster element. And then here the coaster kind of moves around the corner and then lines back up after that turnaround with the first part. I kind of wanted to create this like, the coaster was surrounding the area, the same way that Robin Hood does, or did, sorry, at Wallaby, Holland. I've just done this in an effort to create like an immersive area that this coaster will exist in, and it can be filled with like actual things as well, like seating areas or flat rides or the queue. Then I created this like quite high turn and then a turn up here into what would be the mid-course brake run. But you'll find on wooden coasters, especially older coasters, that not all block sections and brake runs and stuff are actually straight like they would be more on modern coasters. So this one actually curves around at the top to act as a turnaround and a block brake. And then I just kind of meandered it with a few more little airtime hills back to the station. Now in this very unsubtle cutaway, we need to name the log flume and the Super Trooper ride. So for the log flume, I've gone for a very simple name but very effective of Timber Falls. I really like this one. I just thought it's quite a nice name, it's quite classic as well, fits the attraction quite well. And then, drumroll, for the Super Trooper, I have gone for Super Trooper. I just thought it'd be a nice simple name, and the park would have probably just named it straight after the manufacturer's model. So Super Trooper is the name for the Super Trooper. And just like earlier, like we saw me doing, I went around this time with a more extensive pass of like gravity group track, I suppose you'd say. So these fully redone parts, just to make them like more intense and more interesting. So as the coasters got older, obviously coasters are getting better all the time, so the park would have made the decision to go through and reprofile certain areas almost to make the ride still current. And especially with the newer coasters in the park, make this ride still something that people would actually want to go on. You'll probably notice that most of this gravity group retrack work is inspired by Tonnerre de Zeus, or as now I think it's called Tonnerre to Zeus at Parc Asterix in France. This is an older, I think it's CCI wooden coaster, I might be wrong, that's been pretty much 100% retracked by the gravity group, and they've added a lot of new and cooler elements, just like that really big overbank that I built there, which I think they built on one of their airtime hills previously, which is a really cool idea. And then just to make it a bit more interesting, I retracked the entire end section of the ride to create this like really unique twister section. Now I'm hoping that the eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed that these retracked sections were actually teased in the very first episode of Wonderworld. You'll see that in the maintenance area that we built, where is it, down here, that there was actually pieces on the old Wonderworld side, and pieces of the wooden coaster that have obviously been completely taken out and put into the maintenance area. Here, as you can see, I've added these extra supports underneath the pathway of the wooden coaster, just where the wooden supports break out of the iron girders. And then obviously, because this is one of the older coasters in the park, I added this kind of cheap metal fence that goes around the entire perimeter of the ride. Obviously they wouldn't have been paying for the theming that the new rides have now, they wouldn't have done that then, so this is perfectly on brand with this coaster. Then after this, I did my usual method of adding the transfer tracks by just extending the track of the brake run to create the actual like transfer, track pieces, I suppose you'd call them, and then just connected it back up to the station. And then because where I'd put the exit path for the ride, I created a problem for myself of how the actual maintenance vehicles would get to the coaster, so I raised the first turnaround of the ride to make sure that vehicles could get underneath it. After this, I created the concrete pad for the maintenance area and transfer track area, again just using what I normally do with the iron girders and the locomotive rail across to create the actual transfer rail. You've probably noticed as well that this ride actually has the GCI Millennium Flyer trains. I've put these on just simply because the actual skin of the Gravity Group trains that are in the game, I really don't like them. They're like kind of way over themed and look a bit sci-fi alien-ish, so I've put the GCI ones on. The park could have quite easily bought the GCI ones to retrofit out the old ones just to make the ride a bit smoother and more reliable, so that's what I've gone with for those. And also the colour, I've gone for this sort of industrial blue, and I really don't know why, I just picked it messing around with colours and I just really like it, so that's what colour scheme I've gone with for this. After this, I did my usual foliage pass of most of the area and then continued the retaining fence from the log flume lake to around the front of the coaster. And then continuing the Victorian tile exhibition that this park seems to have turned into, I created yet another pad out of the Victorian tile, which eventually turns into the kind of pre-plaza for the ride area and a seating area. And then, like I mentioned earlier, to kind of add more range to this new area that I've created, I added a classic flat ride. This one being the, the bird swinging thing. I don't really know what it's called. Then to surround this flat ride, I created this planter out of beams, wall pieces, fences, and then just some foliage and flowers. I did my usual custom fencing for the flat ride pad, just like I did in the last episode for those 3 flat rides. And then just made a blueprint out of the planter that I built earlier and copied and pasted it around the perimeter of the flat ride area. This is actually a common trick most theme parks use, where they'll create like a smaller, more natural barrier out of foliage and then a bigger barrier behind it. Once I'd done that, I moved on to fleshing out the actual station building and the paths that lead off of it, and then eventually building up a better concrete pad for the transfer track area. And also that I've noticed just while editing this, that this transfer track area doesn't have a roof, which it probably should because this is the maintenance shed, so in between now and the park tour, when I do the park touch-ups, I'll definitely add a roof to this area. Then to add more variety to the area and create a reason for more of the guests to come down here, I added this food unit. I made this building to look quite classic like the other rides and buildings in this area, but then had a bit of fun with some of the cladding that you'll see later, as if it's been like modernised recently. And it seems to have reached that part of the episode again where we're just doing lots and lots of work with beams. You all seem to like it when I do these beam roofs, and just like the log flume building, because these have been built around the same time, I thought I'd create a really intricate beam structure for the inside supports of this roof as well. In the exact same method as last time, this is just done by creating a simple frame and then copying and pasting it loads. And then in an effort to add more interest to the actual plaza area, I created some holes in the pathing around the Victorian tile, and then in the same style as the planters that surround the flat ride, I added some more planters. especially when it comes to like Alton Towers and stuff. I think more classic parks in terms of theming, they would have just more done landscaping, sort of like this. It just kind of like fills in dead areas and it still looks quite nice and natural, as opposed to like having gigantic theme structures, like take the Wickerman effigy at Alton Towers, known as Big Bob. So it's just a cheaper and more natural way of adding theming to areas. After adding the quite aged wooden roof and then, guess what, more beams to the station building, we are finished for this week. I still can't quite believe that there is one episode left after this until the tour. This 10 coming on 11 weeks has gone so quickly. So thank you again for watching, and I will see you in this ride areas tour. And we're back on Main Street again for the second to last time of this series, obviously not including the tour. Over there will be the next area for the next ride, which will be the last ride in the last episode, which is next week's. I can't believe it's the last episode already. And as we come down here, there's the older area of the park, the wooden wild mouse we built last episode, and then the colossal wooden coaster down there. It's still, I think, just under, it might be like 30 meters tall, which is I think just under the height of whatever Robin Hood is at Wallaby Holland, or Robin Hood was, sorry. Right, I'm really happy with how this area's turned out. Just the area with the log flume and all the classic rides there, they just blend together really nicely. I'm quite happy with how it's turned out, and you can see it's like quite overgrown as well, which it would be with how old the ride was. And I'm quite happy with how the gravity group retract parts look as well. They fit in quite nicely. It's just making an older ride more exciting and thrilling. I'm quite happy with the seating area as well. As you can see, I've put a fence up for the maintenance area of the log flume, just so you can't see it as a nicer view, but I'd like to sit here with that coaster in the background. You can see there, oh hello train, didn't even hear it coming. You can see there with the transition of the different wood materials, and then as you come underneath, enter the massive new plaza for this area. I just really like how big this coaster looks. It's so like foreboding in the area, but then having this really big plaza, you still give the ride a lot of space to breathe. It's nice interaction with the flat ride there as well. So you can see the sign for the flat ride, so if you want to comment a name for that and the coaster, then feel free to. Just see it flying along there back into the station. So yeah, there's the sign for the flat ride. They both got the same sign, this and the coaster, so a name for that and the coaster please, if you want to comment those away. I've added these height ride signs around as well, some of the attractions, like I said, just putting the general touch-ups in before the tour. I'll go around and add them to each attraction as well, whether it's 1.1 meters or 1.4. And then there's the grill, which is the little eatery area that I've named down here as well, with some really nice views of the coaster as it's flying around its course. I just love how overgrown and unkept this area looks, but it's been done on purpose. As you can see there's the sign for the wooden coaster name. So we'll go in the queue. I think we'll probably skip most of the queue, you know, because we own the place. But yeah, I'm just so happy with how it looks. So overgrown and everything. I've timed it as well, so the coaster dispatches just as this one is like nearly into the last break at the end, the block break. So it's quite good throughput wise. So we'll head up into the station. A beam lover's dream, I suppose. I've added the row numbers as well. I'm going to go back for all the other rides and add row numbers to them all. It just makes them look more professional, makes the station look a lot more finished off. I love that view out of the brake run. You can see pretty much the entire layout from there. That'd be where I'll be taking photos in the queue, annoying everyone, like holding them back so I can get the right point of where the train is. So I will see you all after this coaster's POV and the tease for next week's episode, which is the final episode, which is very weird to say. It doesn't feel like this series is already nearly over. It's mad. So yeah, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.